My name is Zane Mercer, and I want to tell you something that took me 34 years and one very bad afternoon to fully understand. The most dangerous thing in the galaxy is not a warship. It is not a weapon. It is not an army, or an empire, or a fleet that has never lost a battle. The most dangerous thing in the galaxy is a person who has decided that there is something worth more to them than their own survival. Once a person makes that decision, genuinely and completely, there is nothing you can threaten them with, nothing you can offer them, nothing you can do to move them from the ground they have chosen to stand on. I made that decision on a Tuesday afternoon on the station concourse of Kepler 9, with 12 Sorvian soldiers around me and their commander standing 4 feet away, waiting for me to do something I was not going to do. The Sorvian Empire had been expanding through the outer belt for 30 years. They were organized, powerful, and ran their expansion on a simple and effective principle. You either knelt or you were removed, and kneeling meant your station continued to operate under Sorvian authority, and removal meant it did not operate at all. Most stations knelt. Kepler 9 had not given them an answer yet, which was why the soldiers were here and why their commander had come personally and why she was standing on the main concourse in front of the assembled station staff, waiting for the station director to make the formal gesture of submission that would put Kepler 9 on the Sorvian registry and end the conversation. The station director was a Harathi named Vaughn, old and careful, and genuinely trying to protect the 4,000 people who lived and worked on this station, and I understood completely why he was about to kneel. He was not a coward. He was a man doing the math on 4,000 lives against one principle, and arriving at the only answer that math allows. I was not the station director. I was a communications engineer on a 3-week maintenance contract, which meant I had no authority and no standing and absolutely no reason to be doing what I did next. I stepped forward. The commander's name was Sova Reth, and she was everything her reputation said she was. Tall and precise, with copper skin and dark eyes that held the particular stillness of someone who had seen every situation there was and had a prepared response for all of them. Her uniform was immaculate, and her rank markings were the highest I had ever seen on a Sorvian officer, and every soldier in the room stood differently when she was present. She looked at me when I stepped forward the way you look at something unexpected that has not yet been categorized. "You are not the station director," she said. "No," I said. "Then step back," she said. "I will not," I said. The room went very quiet. Sova Reth looked at me with those still dark eyes, and I looked back at her, and for a moment nobody moved. "You understand what you are doing," she said. It was not a question. "Yes," I said. "You understand what happens to people who stand in this position," she said. "I have heard," I said. "And yet," she said. "And yet," I agreed. She studied me for a long moment. There was no anger in her expression, which I had expected, and no contempt, which I had also expected. What was there was something more like genuine attention, the kind you give to a thing that does not fit your existing categories, and therefore requires actual consideration. "Why?" she said. It was one word, and it was a real question, not a formality. And I gave it the real answer it deserved. "Because 4,000 people on this station built something worth keeping," I said. They built it themselves, with their own work and their own time, and they should not have to hand it over because a larger force arrived and asked for it. That is not how things should work. "That is exactly how things work," she said. "Everywhere, always." "Not with us," I said. "Humans have been told that is how things work for a very long time. We have never fully accepted it. You are one person," she said. "A communications engineer on a short-term contract. You have no standing here. I have standing here," I said. "I have been here for 3 weeks. I know the people on this station. That is enough standing for me." She was quiet for a moment. "I could have you removed," she said. "You could?" I said. "That does not concern you," she said. "It concerns me," I said honestly. "It does not change my position." She looked at me for a long time, and I held her gaze because looking away was not an option I was entertaining. Then she did something I had not expected. She asked me to walk with her. Not a request exactly. Not an order exactly. Not an order exactly. Something in between, delivered in a tone that was different from the tone she had been using, and I looked at Vaughn, who gave me the smallest possible nod that meant he did not know what was happening, but he thought I should go, and I went. She walked me to the far end of the concourse away from the soldiers and the station staff to the large viewport that looked out over the belt, all that dark rock and cold light hanging in the deep quiet of space. She stood with her hands behind her back and looked out at it for a moment. 30 years, she said. I've been doing this for 30 years. No station has ever sent a single person to stand in that position. Then, it was overdue, I said. It changes nothing, she said. The outcome is the same. The outcome is not the same, I said. The outcome is not the same, I said. The outcome where Kepler-9 kneels freely, different from the outcome where Kepler-9 kneels after someone stood up and said it was wrong. One of those outcomes people forget. The other one they remember. She turned to look at me. You did this, she said slowly, so that people would remember. I did this because it was right, I said. Whether people remember is not my concern. She held my gaze with those still dark eyes, and I saw something move behind them that I had not seen there before, something that was doing genuine work. The census reports on humans, she said after a moment. I've heard, I said. They say your species is mid-tier, she said. Average across most categories, short-lived, no significant military capability at scale. Accurate, I said. They do not mention this, she said. No, I said. They never do. What is this, she said. Give it a name. I thought about it honestly, looking out at the belt, at the dark rock and cold light that had been there long before any empire and would be there long after all of them. We call it stubbornness, I said. But that is not quite right. It is closer to this. We decide what we are willing to accept and what we are not. And once we decide, the size of the thing asking us to accept it does not matter. That is, she said carefully, either the most irrational thing I have ever heard or the most admirable. With humans, it is usually both, I said. She was quiet for a long time. Then she turned from the viewport and walked back toward the concourse, and I walked beside her because there was nothing else to do. She stopped in the center of the concourse where the soldiers and the station staff were still waiting in the same positions they had held for the last 20 minutes, and she stood there for a moment looking at the assembled faces. Then she spoke to her senior officer in rapid Sorvian that my translator caught most of, but not all of, and the senior officer looked briefly surprised, and then composed himself and relayed the instruction to the soldiers. The soldiers stood down. I watched this happen and kept my expression neutral, because showing relief too early is how you undo things. Sovarev turned to Vaughn. Kepler-9 will be registered as a neutral station under Outer Belt Accord provisions, she said. Not Sorvian authority. Neutral status. You will maintain your own governance. Vaughn looked at her, then at me, then back at her. Why? He said, which was the same question she had asked me, and which deserved the same honest answer. She looked at him for a moment. Because someone reminded me, she said carefully, that the outcome where a station submits freely is different from the outcome where a station submits after someone stood in the way. She paused, and I decided I preferred a different outcome. She walked to the docking bay without looking back, and her soldiers followed, and the sound of the Sorvian ship detaching from the docking clamp was the best sound I had heard in a long time. The concourse was very quiet for a moment. Then Vaughn looked at me with old, careful eyes that held something new in them. You are a communications engineer, he said. On a 3-week contract, I said. Your contract, he said, has been extended indefinitely. If you want it, at the belt moving in its slow, quiet way, and thought about 34 years and one bad afternoon, and the decision that turned out not to be a decision at all, but just the next thing to do when you already knew what you were willing to accept and what you were not. I want it, I said. 3 weeks later, a message came through on my personal frequency from a Sorvian military address. It was from Sovareth. It was short. It said, the census reports on your species are being reviewed. I sublime. It did the revision request myself. I thought you should know. I read it twice. Then I went back to work, because Kepler-9's relay systems needed attention, and I had a contract to keep, but I saved the message. Some things are worth keeping.